Hey gang, it's Squill, and the Adventure Time movie was officially announced very recently at Cartoon Network's Annecy panel, alongside Heyo Bimo, a preschool show starring Bimo, and Side Quests, a prequel? Midquel? Reboot? Starring Finn and Jake. I already made a first impression style video about this news, but I have more to say on these projects. Today I will be discussing my predictions for the movie, and very soon I will be making a video discussing side quests and my worries for the project. Obviously one of these videos will be way less positive than the other, but for now, let's all bask in the glory of the announcement of the Adventure Time movie. After a cancelled theatrical and TV movie, it's incredibly satisfying to see an Adventure Time movie finally come into fruition, so let's all do some speculating. Before we get into any plot stuff, I want to discuss the film's format, particularly whether it will be a theatrical movie or a streaming or TV movie. Personally, I think the movie's going straight to Matt's. Cartoon Network just doesn't do theatrical movies. Their last one was the Powerpuff Girls movie in 2002, which was a box office bomb. Ever since, they haven't really taken a chance on theatrical movies. Technically, there is the Teen Titans Go movie from 2018, but that's a DC movie, so it doesn't really count. This is probably for the best, however. While it would be amazing to see Adventure Time up on the big screen, being a theatrical film would require the story to try its hardest to appeal to as many newcomers as possible, and us Adventure Time fans surely don't want that. We want the movie to build off of aspects of the original series without needing to worry about alienating newbies. I don't want an Adventure Time movie that appeals to a broad audience. I want an Adventure Time movie that's unbridledly Adventure Time. And while this does mean it won't get that theatrical film budget, if it's given around the same amount of money as the Steven Universe movie, it'll undoubtedly be a feast to the eyes. The Steven Universe movie is one of my favorite looking pieces of animation of all time, so I'm hyped for an Adventure Time movie around that same level of quality. Let's also briefly discuss the film's age rating. Animation Magazine says that this will be a family film. At first, this had me worried that the film would be geared towards younger audiences. Fiona and Cake proved that Adventure Time really thrives when it's allowed to appeal more towards older audiences, with less of the restrictions given to a kids show. To go back on that would be a little disappointing. However, if you look at Side Quests, it's clearly labeled as a kids series, as opposed to family. I think this distinction is important, because family, being a separate rating from kids, implies that this movie will be aimed at adults just as much as children. When I hear family in regards to shows and films, I think of something around the same level as The Simpsons or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Something that kids can definitely enjoy, but still have more adult elements. So if this is the case, then I'm perfectly fine with that. Even if it's not quite on the same level as Fiona and Cake, I think the movie will be close enough that it's not really an issue. Okay, now on to the really fun stuff. Predicting the plot. Animation Magazine describes the plot as, Jake and Finn embark on their greatest adventure yet. This plot description is super generic and gives us nothing to work with. A lot of Finn and Jake adventures can be described as their greatest adventure. Luckily, we have a more interesting description given by Twitter user Midomer, who was present at this year's Annecy. His description reads, Finn and Jake set out to find a birthday gift for PB, but their adventure will lead them to world-changing stuff. Still a pretty vague description, but there's a lot more to work with here. First off, Finn and Jake finding a gift for PB will obviously not be the main plot of the film. This is very clearly just the inciting incident that gets the plot started. However, the fact that the film will take place on or near PB's birthday is telling. Bonnie hasn't had a ton of focus since the end of the original series. Sure, she had Obsidian, but that's more of a Marceline-centric story than PB. Perhaps this is the time we finally get another PB-focused story, one that also heavily features her dynamic with Finn. Finn and PB's relationship is one of the most important in the entire series, possibly only second to that of Finn and Jake, so it makes perfect sense for it to be the main focus of the movie. Perhaps Aunt Lolly will also make an appearance here. It'd be nice to get a bit of their dynamic. But as for PB's arc in the movie, I think the perfect story to tell with her would be her finally stepping back from the Candy Kingdom. Obsidian implies that she now has a more laid-back approach to her kingdom, choosing to live the domestic life with Marcy, and if this movie takes place in between Come Along With Me and Obsidian, then it makes sense for it to fill in this gap. Maybe Finn, Jake, and Marcy are trying to convince PB to step away from her kingdom, but PB, being the stubborn person that she is, keeps declining. Then she goes through an arc throughout the film that makes her change her mind. Hell, going back to Aunt Lolly, maybe she could take some responsibilities toward the kingdom from PB, thus redeeming herself better than she did in Come Along With Me. Considering how important PB's desire for control over her kingdom is, I think this was the perfect final arc for her. But that's only half of the description. What about the world-changing stuff? Well, truthfully, this is vague enough to be anything. However, my best guess would be that the story centers around the humans settling onto Ew. Again, this makes perfect sense if it takes place after Come Along With Me, but before Obsidian. We could even get a full scene based off of the moment in the Come Along With Me montage where Minerva and the humans arrive on Ew. The dynamic between Finn, Minerva, and the humans would undoubtedly make for a strong emotional story, and it's an event big enough to base an entire movie around. I would love if we saw Finn and Minerva talk about Martin. Maybe we could even get a flashback with him. I'm gonna predict that at some point in the film, Minerva builds a new arm for Finn. This would be a nice moment to solidify Minerva as Finn's mom. We could even get some good Minerva and PB interactions too. Those are two characters I'd love to see play off of each other. We definitely also get at least a bit of Susan and Frida here, hopefully confirming the two as a couple. And this would of course be the perfect time to follow up Dr. Gross's storyline. Now that Fiona and Cake resolve the mystery of the Fiona beam, Dr. Gross is easily the show's biggest unresolved thread. We know for sure she didn't die since Tiffany survived and she clearly made new robotic parts for him. I think the movie would deal with her trying to mechanize the humans and or creatures in Ew. The squirrel we see in the Fiona and Cake episode Cake the Cat seems to be a remnant of this. As for the other characters, we should definitely be getting supporting roles for a lot of them. If Finn and Jake trying to find a gift for PB is the first act, then I think it would be fun to see the two boys rattle off a good number of characters to see if they have any gift ideas. This would be a fun way to get a scene with as many characters as possible. We could get Simon, Marceline, BMO, LSP, Huntress Wizard, Flame Princess, Lemongrab, Lady Rainicorn, etc. Considering that Rebecca Sugar and Pat McHale are producing the film alongside Adam Mudo, I'm certain this film will have its fair share of music. I don't think it'll be a straight-up musical like the Steven Universe movie, but there's gotta be at least a few songs. Marceline will definitely be getting one. You really can't have an Adventure Time movie without at least one Marcy song. And considering her likely having a big role, I'm kinda hoping PB gets a song too. Hayden Walsh has such a wonderful singing voice, and the show barely lets her flex it. Give us another PB song, damn it. I'm hoping Halfshy and Zuzu will come back to write music as well. Their songs for Obsidian and Fiona and Cake are some of my favorites of the entire series. Marcy will probably have a fairly large supporting role. I'm sure Rebecca would be ecstatic to finally be allowed to write her and PB as an actual couple, and their relationship is too iconic not to feature to some degree. Bima will likely have a fairly big comic relief role as well. Of the main Adventure Time characters, I have a feeling that Simon will end up with the shortest end of the stick. We just got a lot of Simon focus in Fiona and Cake, and he's not particularly relevant to Finn and Jake's story. He'll definitely still appear, but his role will be relatively small. Even though Simon is my favorite fictional character of all time, I'm perfectly okay with him getting a smaller supporting role in future Adventure Time projects. His arc was wrapped up almost perfectly in Fiona and Cake Season 1. I don't really see the issue with delegating him to minor appearances from now on. This is also how I'm hoping Fiona and Cake Season 2 handles him. I am predicting, however, that we will get an Ice King flashback. Ice King is just too big a part of Adventure Time iconography that I feel as though he has to be in the movie to some degree. If not, maybe Ice Stain will get an appearance. I could definitely see it. Now time for a hot take. I don't think the Lich will be the big bad of this movie. Even disregarding my idea about Dr. Gross being the villain, I just don't see it happening. I can definitely see the Lich appearing or being referenced in some way. Maybe we get some sort of flashback, or maybe Sweet Pea manages to unleash him a bit, but I don't think he'll be the villain for two reasons. First off, we already had the big final Finn and Jake versus the Lich fight in Together Again. We even got a montage of all their previous battles. To pull this card yet again would feel redundant and unoriginal. And second off, there's Fiona and Cake. After the way in which the Lich was humanized and downplayed as a villain in that series, I don't really think you can just go back to him being a straightforward villain. I don't think I'd be able to take him seriously as the big bad anymore. Fiona and Cake is easily my favorite portrayal of the Lich since Escape from the Citadel, because it actually tried something new with him instead of trying to make him an intimidating threat again. It played with the audience's expectations in regards to who the Lich is, and I respect the hell out of that. So going back to him being the big scary villain just wouldn't hit the same for me. Maybe if they find a new way to subvert it, he could play a part in the story, but I just don't see him as the villain. And now for something I'm still on the fence on, how the movie is gonna handle Jake. Finn and Jake's dynamic is one of, if not the most important aspect of the entire series. They are the heart of the show. So obviously their dynamic should be the heart of the movie. But what could that entail? Is it possible that we could finally see Jake's death? I could honestly see this going either way. Muto has gone on record to say that he doesn't plan on revealing how Jake died, that he'd rather keep it a mystery. I do think, however, that if we ever did get to see how Jake died, now would be the time to do it. It would be a big emotional moment that feels right for a movie. But if we don't see Jake's death, I could also see it more so being a story about Jake getting older. Maybe we see our last Finn and Jake adventure before he decides to settle down with Lady. This would also be a pretty emotional arc for the two brothers. Either way they go about it, however, it would make sense for the story to end with Finn getting the Jake tattoo. Either as a memorial for Jake, or as a way for him to still join him on adventures. And those are my Adventure Time movie predictions. Please take all of these with a grain of salt. Adventure Time is hard to predict for. For all we know, this movie could totally throw us something out of left field that we could never predict. Frankly, if even just one of these predictions came true, I would feel very smart. Please let me know your predictions for the Adventure Time movie in the comments, and have a good one. Squill out.